The sound of paper hitting the metal trash bin echoed through the luxurious boardroom louder than anyone expected. Every executive froze for a heartbeat, but no one dared challenge the Billionaire CEO who had just tossed away a thick report without reading more than its cover page. Across the polished marble floor stood a quiet janitor in a faded navy uniform, his cleaning cart parked outside the glass doors. He lowered his eyes, gripping his worn notebook tighter as years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and silent determination seemed to disappear into that trash can. Yet no one in that room knew that within the next few minutes, the same discarded report would expose a mistake worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and silence every voice that had laughed at him. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, humility, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that remind us never to judge a person by their job. Daniel Carter had never imagined that life would lead him to pushing a mop through the hallways of one of the largest investment firms in New York. Years earlier he had been an ambitious financial analyst with dreams of building companies instead of cleaning offices. But life changed overnight when a tragic highway accident claimed his wife, leaving him alone to raise his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Medical bills, funeral expenses, and caring for a grieving child forced him to abandon his promising career. Every interview afterward ended the same way. Employers saw a single father who constantly needed flexible hours rather than an experienced professional. Eventually, the only job available was working nights as a janitor inside the very corporate world he once belonged to. Daniel never complained. Every evening after putting Lily to bed at his elderly neighbor Mrs. Henderson's apartment, he walked through shining glass doors wearing a maintenance uniform instead of a business suit. While executives argued over billion-dollar investments inside conference rooms, Daniel quietly emptied wastebaskets, polished floors, and fixed broken furniture. Most employees barely noticed him. Some greeted him politely, while others acted as though he were invisible. But every night, after finishing his cleaning duties, Daniel spent another 2 hours reading discarded financial reports, studying market trends, and writing observations in a notebook that had become his private classroom. Knowledge had once been his career, and he refused to let it disappear simply because life had become difficult. One evening, while collecting papers after a strategy meeting, Daniel noticed inconsistencies between internal projections and publicly available market data. At first he assumed he had misunderstood the numbers. But over the following weeks he carefully compared dozens of reports left on conference tables. The deeper he looked, the clearer the danger became. The company's newest international expansion plan relied on inflated forecasts and outdated assumptions. If approved, the investment could destroy years of profits and cost thousands of employees their jobs. Daniel wrestled with himself for days. He understood how impossible it would seem for a janitor to question executives with prestigious degrees. Still, his conscience refused to stay silent. Every spare minute after work, he prepared a detailed report explaining the hidden risks and proposing a safer alternative. The document wasn't emotional or dramatic. It contained carefully researched evidence, financial projections, and practical recommendations. He even paid to print it professionally, sacrificing part of the grocery money he had saved for Lily's birthday. The opportunity finally arrived during the quarterly board meeting. Gathering every ounce of courage, Daniel politely asked the receptionist if he could leave the report for the CEO, Victoria Langston, one of the youngest billionaire executives in the country. Curious board members allowed him inside for only a moment. As Daniel respectfully placed the report on the polished conference table, several executives exchanged amused smiles. Victoria glanced at the maintenance badge hanging from his shirt, flipped open the first page, frowned, and without another thought tossed the entire report into the nearby trash bin. Soft laughter spread around the room. Daniel quietly nodded, whispered an apology for interrupting, and turned toward the door. Then something unexpected happened. One elderly board member, Richard Bennett, noticed a chart partially sticking out of the trash. Years of experience had taught him never to ignore facts simply because of the person presenting them. He reached into the wastebasket, unfolded the report, and began reading. The smile on his face slowly disappeared. He flipped another page. Then another. His breathing slowed. Finally, he looked directly at Victoria with an expression that instantly erased every trace of confidence from the room. Without saying a word, he slid the report across the conference table. The room became completely silent. Executives leaned closer as page after page revealed mathematical errors, overlooked regulations, and unrealistic growth assumptions. Daniel's calculations exposed risks that expensive consulting firms had somehow missed. More astonishing was the alternative strategy he proposed, reducing potential losses while increasing long-term returns. Victoria's confident expression slowly faded. For the first time in years, she realized she had judged someone's value entirely by a uniform. The silence lasted nearly a full minute before the chief financial officer quietly admitted that Daniel's projections appeared correct. Independent analysts were immediately contacted. Hours later, every one of Daniel's findings was verified. Had the board approved the original proposal that afternoon, the company would have suffered catastrophic losses within months. Instead of celebrating another billion-dollar expansion, the board found themselves staring at the janitor they had nearly humiliated. Victoria slowly walked out into the hallway where Daniel had already resumed mopping the floor as though nothing extraordinary had happened. She watched him work for several moments before asking about his background. Only then did she learn about the analyst career he had lost, the wife he still mourned, the little daughter waiting for him every morning after night shifts, and the notebook filled with years of financial research written during lunch breaks and late nights. The story spread throughout the company within days. Employees who had never learned Daniel's name now greeted him with genuine respect. But what touched Daniel most wasn't the sudden attention. It was the letter Victoria personally delivered to his apartment. Inside was an offer to become Senior Director of Strategic Analysis, complete with flexible hours so he could continue raising Lily without sacrificing family again. Alongside the contract was another handwritten note thanking him for teaching an entire leadership team that wisdom does not wear a designer suit. Months later, the company adopted a new tradition. Every employee, regardless of position, could submit ideas directly to leadership without titles influencing decisions. Innovation flourished because people finally understood that great ideas could come from anyone. For Daniel, the greatest reward wasn't the promotion or the salary. It was watching Lily proudly tell her classmates that her father never gave up, even when the world stopped believing in him. She learned that true success isn't about proving people wrong through anger, but through patience, integrity, and quiet excellence. If this story touched your heart, please support the channel by liking this video, sharing it with friends and family, subscribing, and leaving your thoughts below. Your support helps us continue bringing inspiring stories of hope and kindness to millions around the world. Before the ending, tell us in the comments, have you ever been underestimated because of your job, appearance, or circumstances? We'd love to read your story. Sometimes life places extraordinary people in ordinary uniforms. The world often measures worth by titles, wealth, or appearance, but true character reveals itself through perseverance, humility, and the courage to keep doing the right thing when no one is watching. The report that landed in a trash bin did far more than save a company. It reminded everyone in that silent boardroom that respect should never depend on a person's position, because the next life-changing idea may come from the one everyone overlooked. There are moments in life that begin quietly, so quietly you might miss them if you blink, but later become the kind of memories that shake the soul. This story begins on a warm afternoon in a small family restaurant, where sunlight spilled through wide glass windows and settled softly on the tables. People laughed, plates clattered, the smell of fresh fries filled the air, and yet, in one corner, a young woman stood frozen as if every sound in the world had disappeared. Her daughter, a tiny girl no older than 4, stared wide-eyed at the plates of crispy chicken and golden fries placed before a father and his young daughter at the next table. And in that moment, even from across the room, anyone could see it, hunger, innocence, and yearning mixing into one heartbreaking expression. The mother noticed it too, and her eyes filled with panic. She grasped her daughter's hand, lowered her head, and turned as if to leave silently without drawing attention to their situation. She didn't want pity. She didn't want eyes. She only wanted to disappear. Before the story unfolds, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of good people still existing in this world, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. The mother's name was Mira, a woman who once had dreams as bright as the morning sky but whose life had slowly been overshadowed by circumstances she never saw coming. After her husband abandoned them without warning, leaving behind debts and empty promises, Mira found herself juggling 2 small jobs, sleepless nights, and a constant fear of failing her little daughter, Lila. Their days were built around survival. Their nights were built around hope. And yet hope was sometimes harder to find than food. That day, Mira had walked into the restaurant not to eat but to collect a job application. She had been told they needed part-time help, and she had rehearsed what she would say with trembling nerves. She hadn't planned on her daughter witnessing other families enjoying food while she had nothing to offer. She hadn't planned on her stomach growling loud enough for Lila to hear. And she definitely hadn't planned on Lila stopping dead in her tracks, transfixed by the plates on the neighboring table. The man at that table was Adam, a single father raising his 10-year-old daughter, Emily. He was dressed simply, a man who had learned to navigate life with quiet strength. His daughter sat beside him, full of youthful joy, chatting about school and friends. Their table was filled with food, not a feast, but enough to look like luxury to a starving child. Adam noticed the little girl's gaze first. Her small hands clutched the edge of her mother's dress, her eyes locked on the chicken as if she were watching the answer to a prayer she hadn't dared to speak out loud. There was something about hunger in a child's eyes that pierced deeper than words. It wasn't noisy. It didn't scream. It simply sat there, silent, pure, and impossible to ignore. Mira saw Adam noticing them and instantly tugged her daughter away, whispering apologies in a shaky voice, desperate to disappear before anyone could think she was begging. In her world, dignity was one of the few things she still had left, and she protected it fiercely. But Lila's small footsteps faltered, her head turning again toward the food as though her heart refused to listen to her mother's urgency. Adam stood up slowly, torn between respecting their privacy and wanting to help. He had known struggle before. He had known the kind of days where pride bites you harder than hunger. He couldn't just sit there. He couldn't pretend he hadn't seen. Something inside him refused to let the moment pass. Mira tried to hurry to the door, her heart pounding with the familiar mix of fear and embarrassment. She hated this feeling, this quiet shame that came from not being able to give her daughter simple things. In her pocket was enough money for bus fare and one loaf of bread. That was it for the day. She had hoped to stretch it across 2 meals. Every step toward the exit was heavy, each one a reminder that life had reduced her to this. And then everything paused. Lila tugged at her mother's hand and turned to look back once more, her eyes big, honest, and filled with longing. Adam couldn't bear it. He walked closer, not fast, not loud, just with a gentle determination that carried warmth rather than judgment. There was nothing in his expression that hinted at pity. Only empathy. Only a desire to make the world better if he could, even for one moment. Mira tried to speak, to apologize again, to explain, but her voice cracked before any words could form. She held her daughter's hand tighter, as if preparing to run from kindness before it hurt more than hardship ever had. But then Lila looked up at her mother with those innocent eyes, and Myra's shoulders slumped. She was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of pretending she didn't need help when the truth was slowly crushing her. Adam gently invited them to join the table. Mira refused at first, shaking her head with tears forming despite her attempts to blink them back. But Adam didn't step away. He remained patient, calm, and genuinely kind, offering his seat and splitting the food without hesitation. Emily smiled warmly at Lila, sliding her plate closer with childlike generosity. And finally, with a trembling exhale, Mira allowed herself to sit. The first bite Lila took was small, but it carried the weight of 100 silent prayers. Mira watched her daughter eat with trembling lips, a mixture of relief and guilt washing over her. But Adam spoke softly, sharing his own story, how he had struggled after losing his wife, how raising Emily alone had broken him in ways he never admitted to anyone. He knew how survival felt. He knew what it meant to swallow pride for the sake of your child. For the first time in months, Mira felt seen, not judged, not pitied, but understood. The kindness in Adam's gesture lit a spark inside her, a reminder that good people still existed, even in a world that often felt cold. As the meal went on, the restaurant seemed to grow quieter, as though the universe itself had paused to witness the small miracle happening at that table. When they finished eating, Mira tried to offer money, what little she had, but Adam gently refused. He instead asked how he could help her and her daughter beyond that meal. The question struck her heart so deeply that she almost forgot how to breathe. Help wasn't something she expected. Help wasn't something she believed she deserved anymore. But for the first time in a long while, she felt hope rising again. Before we continue, if this story is touching your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Your support helps us spread real stories of compassion and humanity." As they spoke, Adam recommended Mira for a flexible job opportunity where she could bring Lila along when needed. He even helped her fill out forms and arrange transportation. Emily and Lila played nearby, laughing, their small voices carrying through the room like music. It felt like the beginning of something new, something brighter than anything Mira had dared to imagine. Before the ending, please comment below what part of the story touched your heart the most. Weeks passed, and Myra's life began to stabilize little by little. She started earning enough not just for survival but for comfort. Lila blossomed with the stability, her laughter returning like sunshine after a long storm. And though Mira never forgot the pain she endured, she also never forgot the moment everything changed, the moment one man noticed her daughter staring at his food and chose kindness over indifference. In the end, this wasn't a story about struggle alone. It was a story about humanity, how a single act of compassion can lift someone from the darkest chapter of their life and guide them toward a future filled with hope. And as Mira held her daughter one evening, whispering promises of a better tomorrow, she knew deeply that sometimes, the smallest moments become the biggest miracles. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread, and help us spread more stories that remind the world what kindness truly means.